Well, hello, everybody. I'm assuming I have actually hit the right buttons again. Oh, the new setup is interesting. It's going to take me about 30 seconds before I realize if I am here or not. When my TV actually goes on like it just did. I am really here. I hope everybody is having a wonderful day today. It is a little chilly here in the metro Atlanta area. I got up, I got myself showered and everything, and came downstairs to take Riley out for her morning walk. And right as I'm about to open the door, I'm like, I don't even know what the temperature is outside. So I asked my wonderful smart speaker what the temperature was, and it told me that it was 30 degrees with a wind chill of 21. So for those of you in metric, those are both below freezing. Yeah, it was a little cold. I was in shorts, so I was like, okay, let me put a jacket on. And I stepped outside just to see if I could handle the chilliness. And yeah, my legs got a little cold about 2/3 of the way around the block. But she got her walk this morning. That was the important thing because she demands walks. I did decide that maybe next time I should run upstairs and grab sweatpants if I when I need to take her on a walk. But that'll be after this live, and hopefully it's gotten a little bit warmer. Checking into the chat, I see we have Bonita. Good morning, Bonita. And Tamala. And Kathy Klein, who is in frigid Illinois. Yeah, I can be sure of that. And Jacqueline says that there's 2 to 4 inches of snow in Michigan, and it's still snowing. I don't envy you. I do not miss the snow. I've been looking through my time hop the past few days, and apparently between like January 10 and January 28th is the biggest chances of snow here in the metro Atlanta area. Luckily, we don't have that yet. Good morning, Shelly and Candace. Sarah says it's cold, windy, and a little snowy in Indianapolis. It's a great weekend to stay indoors. Yes, that is the best thing that I tell people when it's like, one of those, what traditional people say is cold, miserable, windy, rainy, basically the icky weekends. I will tell them that it's a gorgeous weekend, and they will look at me like I'm crazy, and I will remind them that I quilt, and these are the best days to be indoors. Good morning, Jackie. Colleen, good morning. Working on a flannel quilt to keep warm. Uh, yeah, that'll be fun. And apparently something vanished because my chat moved around. I'll see what that was later. So what I'm working on today as we get settled in is, oh, the pattern is all the way over there. So I can't show the pattern. I'll show it on my vlog tomorrow. But what I'm going to do is just a whole bunch of half square triangles, and you put it in a certain formation, and it looks pretty awesome. In the last Fort Worth Fabric Studio subscription box, we got a bundle of blues for fat quarters, blue grunges. And I was like, ooh, I have an idea for what to do with it. And the pattern is just a whole bunch of, like I said, half square triangles. You put them together. You need your blues. So I've got these already cut up. And then you need your background. So I am using grunge white paper. And basically you sew them into half square triangles. The pattern itself says to use whatever size inch squares. Draw a line down the center, sew both sides on the line, trim it up to whatever it just happens to be. The whole Missouri Star, figure out what the largest you can get out of all of them is, and then sew them into your pattern. And I'm a little OCD about making sure everything comes out the same size, and then I'm also a little I don't like trimming after the fact. That's the reason why these graduation quilts have taken so long, is because it's that extra trimming step. So if I can do a method that makes me not have to do extra trimming, then I am all for it. So I use Triangulations. What Triangulations is I loosely call it a piece of software. It's really just a printable PDF. And it comes in all different size half square triangles. This looks like the 4-inch finished. And what you do is you put this on top of, or you take your, you take your two fabrics. So here is my blue, here is my white. You put them right sides together, and because this is paper piecing, or it's a paper piecing cousin, they don't have to be the exact same size as I'm showing here. They're not the same size. It just matters that your Triangulations covers the fabric properly. And I just did this wrong. What I use, like, you can pin, you can do glue stick, any other methodology, but my favorite is to use the Craft Bond. It says permanent dot runner, but it's really not permanent. So let me get my other camera on. I'll get this open. I bought this at Walmart. And it also has refills, which are just these, where you can just pop this open and just replace the cartridge in there. There is also an orange one, which is tape runner, and I haven't attempted to use that yet. But what I do is go to the back side of the paper, and I just put a couple lines of glue dots. Let's see, can you see those? There's a line here, there's a line here, and there's a line here, and they are outside of my sewing line, so I can't make a comment about does it gum up your machine, because I don't sew over it. And then what I do after that is I line it up on my fabrics, making sure that it covers everything. Push it down, and it's basically pinned together. The two layers of fabric aren't pinned together, but the glue dots are keeping the foundation from moving. And Triangulations, like I said, it's basically just a PDF. You can print out whatever size you want, and the different sizes will have different numbers of triangles on them. Just because, you know, if you're going to do 1-inch triangles for whatever reason, you can fit a lot more on a piece of paper than in this case, a 4-inch, where you can only fit 2 on a piece of paper. And it's like I said, it's very convenient because I can print out how many I want. I use newsprint, but you could also use any type of paper. And basically, you go from there. You sew on these dotted lines, and then when you're done, what I do is I cut longer lines first, then shorter lines, and then I cut across and then trim out the dog ears. And you have a perfect half square triangle that are all the same size and not a lot of work. In fact, it took me like 10 minutes just to cut out these, I think it's 96 pieces that I had to do. I think it's 48 backgrounds and 48 foregrounds. and that gets me to 96. And like I said, it just took me 10 minutes because I wasn't concerned about getting things the exact size that I needed. As long as it was about the size I needed, maybe a little bit larger, then it works. And then we'll go into sewing in a minute, but I have seen the chat got a little bit crazy while I was talking about this. So let me rewind a little bit. Da da da. Candace says we have sun here in Atlanta, so we can't complain. It is very sunny. The storm that we had on Tuesday, I think it was, my neighbor across the street said that we got 4 inches of rain from that storm. And it's a good thing that our Georgia red clay drains. Good morning, my friend Stephanie of Quilting with Stephanie Stitches. I can't wait for your live this evening, just because they're so much fun. Good morning, Karen. Cindy says it's chilly in, I'm going to assume that meant damp, in Bel Air, Maryland. Heidi Ho from Heidi Ho. It's very lightly snowing for Sarah. Good morning, Mary. Hello, my friend Steven. Just lots of craziness up there in Canada, I hope. Let's see. Mary says that she used the dots in scrapbooking and never thought about using them for paper piecing. Yeah, that's my really favorite trick. I don't like pinning because you get a little bit of a pucker, and the glue sticks just seem to dry out all the time. That said, these do dry out after a while. I bought some like 4 or 5 years ago, and they stopped working. So don't overstock if you're not planning on using them a lot. Let's see. Sarah saying hi to Stephen and Walter. Hi, Karen Brunette. Lots of people. Good morning, Denise. And Mary says snow and freezing rain in Oregon. I can accept the snow. I refuse to accept freezing rain because that's the worst part about any winter storm. So as I was talking about these, to sew them up, you pick a spot to start at. And I usually like to pick this inner line going this direction. When it comes to a 4 set of half square triangles, it just seems to be an easier place for me to start. You can obviously start at any of these arrows. You can follow the arrows. You can go backwards to the arrows. It really doesn't matter as long as you sew every dotted line. Depending on the pattern, some of the arrows will take you all the way around the entire pattern and end you up where you started, and you only need to do like one pass of them. Some of them you have to do one set of arrows and then you have to do a second set of arrows, just depending on, it's got to be some sort of geometry of figuring out if you can go in and out of those. I know when it's a 4 patch you have to do 2 passes around, but there's like, if it's 2 of these, you can go from start to end without stopping. So it just depends on the geometry of the shape. Like I said, I like to start right here because, one, it gives me a line up point in the middle of these 2 up here, so I can line my needle up with that. I have a laser line on my machine to help me continue to line up, so that makes it a little bit easier. So I can see that my laser line is right on the dotted line, and I will start a little bit too far back. I start about halfway in here. I don't think you can see that too well, but my stitches are starting about halfway in. And sometimes I will just make sure that my needle is lining up right where I want it to line up. My stitch length I've brought down quite a bit. Uh, Most people suggest doing a stitch length of 1.6 to a 1.8. That really depends on the type of paper you're using. The more flimsy the paper, the bigger the stitch length could be, but I still wouldn't go too much over a 1.8. This is newsprint, as I said. You can get it off of the Amazons. And I have noticed that with this paper and this machine, a 1.8 works great. With different machines, you may need to go about smaller, you may need to go bigger. So you have to figure out what works for your machine. Uh, Mary says that she loves triangle papers. Yes, this is basically a cousin of the triangle papers that you can purchase from like Fat Quarter Shop or that, like Triangles on a Roll or the Fat Quarter Shop's papers that they give or sell. So this is a cousin, but you have to have a printer yourself to do this, and you have to um, have the paper. In the long run, it can be cheaper if you do a lot of them. If you do so little, it may just be cheaper to buy your other stuff. If you're trying to use it with like layer cakes and stuff, I know they have the cake mixes, and those are wonderful because they fit exactly on the layer cake. So it's all about what fits for you. Uh, Colleen asked, "What paper am I printing on?" It is newsprint. They come in 8.5 by 11 sheets of paper. Like I said, the Amazons sells it. It's I don't remember how much I paid for it, but anytime that I'm doing any type of foundation paper piecing, that's what I prefer to use. I believe Carol Doak has a branded version of it, which is like 17 times more expensive. I'm exaggerating, but it is a lot more expensive because you only get a small number of sheets for a larger price. It may rip better. I don't know. I've not had issues ripping this. Uh, Mary says, nice nails. They look like Easter eggs. The color is not going to show up there. Is it going to show up here? It's called Achievement Unlocked. It's a OPI color. It was an Xbox Series color that they brought out a couple years ago. I like purples. It's gaming related, so I'm kind of gamey. So it's kind of fun. I'm going to start sewing before I get too much more distracted because I actually want to show how this works. So you just sew on the lines. I sew a little bit slower. In fact, this is mostly my speed sewing when I'm doing foundation paper piecing. The question somebody's going to end up asking is, does it dull your needle? I don't know. I try not to keep my needle in long enough to decide if that is actually happening. When I'm pivoting, sometimes I mean, as you know, your stitch length, it may or may not get you to where you need to pivot. So feel free to lift up your needle, realign, and start going again. The whole needle thing, I understand why people ask that, but needles are so cheap that you should be able to replace them a lot more often than we do. Because I'm in a seam area, I can just reline up that way by shifting. Again, seam areas, I don't care if I'm on a line or off the line. Like right here, I am like 1/8 of an inch off the dotted line because it's in the seam area. I'm going to be cutting it off. Here, I want to be as close to the line as possible. Mary says my machine sounds like a Bernina. Nope, it's a brother. So not all sewing machines sound alike. Doing this type of a project, it is really nice to have needle up, needle down. And it is also really nice to have a thread cutter when you get to the end. That way you're not wasting all this extra thread, especially if you end up starting in the middle. So the back side of it looks like this. And I'll put it down here so we can see a little bit better. So basically, this is your equivalent of sewing on both sides of the line if I had done this in a smaller square. And taking off my glasses, see if you can see it on the screen. You really can't. But I am sewn on the lines here. And as you see, it's stuck to the background, but it's not really that stuck. And I'm going to shift over here. Move my papers off. And I'm just going to do a quick couple slices for you so you can see what the end result is. Except rotary cutter is over here. When you are cutting these, you want to cut on the solid lines, which is very easy. So the first set of cuts that I've done have essentially just cut the two sides off, and I've got the top and bottom left. And then at this point, we have, and you can kind of see it from the back, if I was a perfect cutter of 4 7/8 inch squares, I would have basically a perfectly up and down the middle here. But because again, I'm not perfect, it's not done. I didn't have to do all that extra work. I have a bit of waste. As you see, that's one of the cuts that I've done. So it's a bit of waste, but this didn't take me too long. And then at the end, you cut it in half on the line. And then it says here in the corners to trim the dog ears. And I usually do those by feel. And you have, before we open it up, a perfect half square triangle. You can see it from this side. If I open it up, there it is. And then even before I press these open, I separate the papers, crease it just to get a little bit of assistance, and I just rip the papers out. Traditionally, what I'll do is I'll just put on a movie, watch it, and rip papers out for the evening. And like I said, I can just open this up, press it to the dark side, and a perfect half square triangle. Only 732 more to go. While I was up, I did grab the pattern. It is called Underground. It is a Villa Rosa design. It was done in blues in this picture, and we got the blueberry bundle from the Fort Worth Fabric Studio. So I was like, this is going to be perfect for it. The important thing that everybody needs to know about triangulations, and I did this, so I'm going to actually show it, is make sure you print them correctly. This is a correctly printed set of triangulations. The reason why I know is because at the very bottom it says properly printed grid will measure whatever this size is. So from corner to corner it measures that size. I have another, you see 4 inches, they're both 4 inches. And if I have them lined up in the center, one is about half an inch bigger than the other. And it's because my printer decided to shrink this one down. I didn't pay attention because most of the time when I print, I make sure all the settings are correct. Apparently I didn't when I did these. So I have a handful of these that are the wrong size. Thankfully I didn't use them to help me measure what I need to do, but that is a risk that you have when you're doing triangulations, is if you don't print correctly, you're going to have issues. The good thing is if you're only using half square triangles in your project and all your half square triangles are, you know, about half an inch too small or a quarter of an inch too small, they will still line up unless you are doing with something else that is cut from traditional cutting. So always measure your stuff because you don't want to have to figure out how to trim stuff down. You're going to have a smaller quilt as well. A half inch by multiple pieces is a lot, or a quarter inch by multiple pieces is a lot in the end. So do be cautious if you do get triangulations. I do have a link in the video description to a sample sheet if you want to try out triangulations yourself. It's a really odd size, but if you want to try it, you can do it for whatever size. Like you're just going to get a whole bunch of half square triangles, and you might want to put it together in a star shape or something, maybe for a table runner, or not. Yeah, you could do multiple for a table runner or a pillow or something like that. So there's a lot of stuff that you can do with this, with just the sample sheet. And the sample sheet has more than 4 triangles on it. I think it's got 32 triangles on it. Like I said, it's a weird shape. It's or a weird size. It's a something and a 16th or something and 3/16. Something that, again, most quilters won't use. But if you're going to do a project where everything's going to be the same size, and you're just going to, you're going to do a project using just half square triangles, and you can line up half square triangles hundreds of thousands of different ways, you can use the sample sheet to do that. So I recommend, if you want to try it, you can use, like I said, any printer paper that you want. The cheaper the printer paper, the better. Don't use your expensive, it's gonna hold its shape, like 45 weight printer paper. Use the thinnest paper you can get, which is usually equivalent to the cheapest paper you can get when you're talking in terms of the Walmart or the Target or something like that. And like I said, Amazon, they do sell newsprint. Not every printer likes newsprint. Whatever newsprint I purchase for here, I can only feed one page in at a time. So trying to print 48 pages for this, I had to feed them in one at a time in order to get them to print. There's been another question about ink with these, and I have a laser printer, so I can't answer the ink question as to whether or not it'll bleed. What I usually will tell people is don't use steam. Don't use anything to give you moisture when you're doing any type of foundation paper piecing, because that gives that opportunity for whatever ink or toner or whatever you have to bleed into your project, which is something that we don't want to do. So as long as you're not using any moisture, you shouldn't have any issues. So I think that answers most of my heads up questions. This is a good print. This one's the bad print. Trying to keep my bad stuff and the good stuff, since I have a whole, like I said, pile of foundation papers that I can work on today. Going back to the chat, let me see what's going on. So with Debbie says, coming in a little late, just piecing and listening, in from Western Canada. Mary says she'll be darned with the fact that she didn't guess the sound correctly. Denise is doing some machine embroidery today. That sounds fun. Good morning, Catherine. Ooh, Sarah has got 2 more weeks before her machine comes back from the spa. Oh, at least you have a backup machine. That's why I have... Wait, how many machines do I have in the house? 1, 2, 3, 4... I have 5 machines in the house. Only one I really use. But I did use what I call my travel machine for the first time when I went to Stephanie Stitch's retreat back a couple weeks ago. I want to be able to say last year, but it still was only a couple weeks ago. But I know this machine needs a spa day. My embroidery machine needs a spa day. And I figured before the next retreat, I should give my travel machine a spa day, because you should really give them a spa day at least every other year. And because it had been a couple years between when I bought my travel machine and when I used it, it's probably due. My chat just moved. Digitizing labels. Yep, hopefully Sarah will be ready for Millersburg. Good morning, Charlotte. So with Debbie says that she uses Microtex needles and find they are great with stitching with paper. Microtex needles are what I prefer to use too. So they do work great with paper. They also work great with traditional piecing and everything. Hi, Jean E. Not to be confused with Jeannie. Heidi's like, heck yeah, with a laser printer. The whole ink issues, it's ridiculous. It's like ink is almost the price of saffron. And that's saying something. I've seen various other like printers are saying, they're trying to solve the ink issues, but they're really not. They're just making it worse. Good morning, Mozilla. Leslie's asking, do I make my own triangle paper? I did not make I did and did not make these. There is a software, and I'm using software loosely. It's really a PDF. There's links in the description below if you're interested in it. It's called Triangulations, and they have basically it's a 100-page approximately PDF that you can print individual pages out and decide, okay, I need a 2.5 inch finished half square triangle, so I need to print this page. Or if I need a 3 inch finish, I need to print this page. And you can print as many pages as you want. You just got to make sure your printer settings are correct. Some printers like to scale things up or down, so you got to make sure everything is right. But you can print whatever number of pages you want of it, and it's essentially you're printing your own triangle paper. But I did not design the software. I did not design the print. I can't give the print, but there is a sample page out there, also linked in the description if you want to try it out yourself. Sarah says 5 machines. I gotta upgrade my backup then. So my 5 machines are it's actually not a big deal. I have my primary machine. I have my embroidery machine, which can sew, but if you've heard any of Stephen and Walter's conversations, you want to let your embroidery machine just embroider. But if I wanted to, I could sew. I have my travel machine, which I used at Stephanie's retreat. I have my previous travel machine, which is a Juki, and actually it was also my previous primary machine. That was the first machine that I got that had a thread cutter. I did have one other machine, and I gave it away to somebody who wanted to learn how to sew. Actually, I gave away 2 machines that people wanted to learn to sew. But my 5th machine is, since it's now 2024, I can say this, it's a 100-year-old Singer. It was my great-grandmother's Singer. At some point in the past, I don't know when, it was converted from treadle to electric as a travel machine. I do have her machine. I would like to eventually try to convert it back to a treadle if I can, but that would first make me have to figure out how to find a treadle case. That's not happening anytime soon. Karen asks, do I think AcuQuilt or Triangulations would have more waste fabric? That's a hard question because I don't know how much waste fabric AcuQuilt has. If you are really good at cutting, you can have basically virtually no waste. If you like, I have the extra lines here, or extra paper outside the lines on all 4 sides, and if you figured out what this size was and cut all your fabric to that, you can make your entire waist this little bit, plus whatever ends at your top and bottom. AcuQuilt, I don't know what the waste system is, so you're going to have to decide whether or not it's going to have more or less. I'm just going to call them equivalent, but AcuQuilt may actually have less waste by small amounts, or they can have more waste by small amounts. Cost, though, I think AcuQuilt costs more in total when you talk about the price of the software versus plus the price of the paper plus the price of a printer. I think if you add those 3, you probably get about the price of if you don't have AcuQuilt already. So assuming you don't have either already, it's going to probably be cheaper to buy all 3 of those. But if you talk about I already have an AcuQuilt system and I don't have a printer, then it's probably cheaper to do AcuQuilt. But the waste, I don't know. Charlotte has 4 machines and a serger. I keep pondering a serger, but I never know what I would use it for because I don't do clothing. And I don't know what sergers can be used for quilting. Good morning, Jeanette. Catherine says treadle cases on easy to find on, Facebook Marketplace. There's also a lot of issues on Facebook Marketplace. I've tried to sell a couple things, and it's a nightmare. I'm going to start conning my next door neighbor into selling things for me and saying, okay, here's your commission for it. Shelly asks if my embroidery machine is also a brother. Yes, it is. It's a Brother Luminaire. So I got that. It was 4 years ago this past week or two. And the reason why I know that is because my CVS receipt picture showed up in my time hop this week. I'll see if I can remember to share it on my vlog. After I bought my embroidery machine, a couple weeks later, I went back to the shop because they said that I was given, as part of my purchase, X number of spools of thread, and they had Glide at the time. And what was I going to say? I purchased, or I got my how many spools of thread a couple weeks later, but I said I wanted to purchase one of everything. So I have a wall of Glide over here. I have a portion of a wall over there. Oh, you actually can see a little bit of wall over here. I have 2 shelves there. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.5 shelves over here, all full of Glide. And that was a long receipt. So, yeah, everything in the house that I use is a brother. The things that I don't use are a Juki, which I'm pondering selling or gifting it at some point in the near future. Probably when I can find all the rest of the accessories for it. And then my Singer, which is not going to go anywhere. I do want to do a project on it one day, but I don't know which project and when. Mary says, I can make a quilt on a serger. I trust you. I just got to figure out what. Steven has some great information. He says he has both an AcuQuilt and Triangulations, and the waist is great on an AcuQuilt, but the AcuQuilt is faster. I would not argue that the AcuQuilt is faster because you can put a lot of layers together and it's already cut, so you don't have to do any extra stuff. And then, like the cotton cuts projects are AcuQuilt cut. And if you saw my stuff from Stephanie Stitch's retreat, everything that I worked on at the retreat was cotton cut, so it was all pre-cut AcuQuilt. And yeah, there was a lot done. Mary has 7 machines and 2 sergers. Karen Burnett says, don't laugh, but what is an AcuQuilt? That is definitely not a laughable question. An AcuQuilt is die cutting. It's a system, and I'm going to use this probably poorly because I've only seen videos and pictures and descriptions. But you cut some fabric and you lay it in what they call a die, and then you put everything in this smusher and you roll it through the AcuQuilt machine. And when you roll it through the AcuQuilt machine, the sharp parts of the die push up through the fabric, cutting the fabric. It will cut, it only cuts one size and shape, or sets of sizes and shapes per die. So you have to buy all these individual dies if you want to do like a 2-inch half square triangle, a 3-inch half square triangle, a 4-inch half square triangle. It's a different set of sizes. You can do strips with it, and also if you do strips, you can put them back sideways to make them into squares. So there's a lot of utility with it, especially people that have hand mobility issues. If you can get everything lined up on your dies and run it through, they have electric versions of it. So it's a lot easier for people instead of trying to use a rotary cutter and cut. So it's great for utility, for like arthritis and stuff. Also, when you have it, you don't have to do any. You shouldn't have to do any trimming or cutting afterwards. Going back to the whole cotton cuts thing, everything that they send you is die cut. So when you sew two triangles together to make a half square triangle, you're going to have that perfect size that you need to put to your square or rectangle next to it. I love the whole idea of die cut stuff. I don't have the room to do die cut stuff, and I don't know if I want that little bit of extra waste and that. But as Steven said, it is a lot faster, um, especially if you're doing like hundreds of them. You can just run them through, and you could have basically that exploding heart quilt that everybody is all about right now. You could have all the triangles cut for an exploding heart quilt, probably in a good, couple hour afternoon, as opposed to if I'm trying to do it through triangulations, it's going to take me probably roughly the same time just to get the rough cuts done. And then after I get the rough cuts done, I have to sew them, and then I have to do the fine cuts. So depending on the project, it can definitely be faster, but I enjoy the process, and I don't mind cutting straight lines that are already drawn for me. So it really just does depend on what works for you. Steven says that the AcuQuilt system is very expensive, but he loves it. He also has gotten some really great deals on dyes from his local quilt shop when they have like a buy one get one half off sale. So that, I mean, I prefer to buy things on sale anyway. But when you have sales like that and it's dyes that you are already looking for, that is definitely the best. Mary talks about the paper apples and letters and stuff in kids' schools. They are usually done with a die cutting machine. Yes. They also have die cutting machines that'll do your applique stuff. So if you um, put your fusible on your fabric and run it through the applique machine, or not applique, the die cut machine, it will cut your shapes out for you. I've also seen that they also have there's like a scan and cut or something like that that can do something similar to that as well. So you basically have to sell a kidney to pay for a die cut machine and dies. Maybe. Stevens lost several internal organs thanks to that. And Irish Sail Lady says she's working on her trip around the world with K Fabrics. So yeah, when we're talking about which method is better when it comes to a lot of things, it's always one, it's what works with your brain. If the die cuts, if something in the die cut process doesn't work with your brain, then it's not worth it for you. There's also, what works with your budget, because, die cut machines are out of your budget, but maybe also triangulations is out of your budget because you would need to buy a computer, you'd have to buy a printer, you would have to buy the software, and if you don't use it enough, there is no point in purchasing it, because then if you use it for two projects, then that whole system that you've just purchased, if you divide it by two, that's a lot of money. I already have a computer. I've had my printer now since 2005, and I'm still on the original cartridges. But the printer is now starting to not be happy. It's probably some of the newer PostScript drivers or something. but it's also been not happy with this paper, and this is the first paper I've had that it's not been happy with. So it just really depends. I've been planning on getting a new printer anyway, but yeah, it's. Oh, I hit the thread cutter instead of needle up. But it just really depends on what's in your budget as to what you need or what is going to be better for you. In many cases, if you don't use them enough, purchasing the triangles on a roll is a better option for many cases because uh, if you buy the sizes that are common for your projects and they're already printed, so you don't have to worry about a printer, you don't have to worry about any setup. They're just very easy to manipulate. So it just really depends on what works best for you and how many projects you use that do this. You also have to have the ability to kind of rewrite in your head the pattern because um, you can't use like a traditional 4 and 7/8 depending on the pattern. You can't use that traditional 4 and 7/8 cut. I probably wouldn't even use a 5-inch cut because that doesn't give enough wiggle room. And you also have to know what your triangulation size is and which cuts are going to be used for triangles. This pattern, because it's all half square triangles, it's easy. When it comes to another pattern, then it gets to be a lot more difficult to do the math in your head. Is it going to be uh, worthwhile to do it in triangulations, or should I just go ahead and use the traditional methods that the pattern calls for? Uh, Cindy says you don't have to deal with bias edges with the papers. Mostly. You're still sewing on the bias, but the papers are giving you a little bit of stability. You do have to be cautious when you're ripping the papers out that you don't stretch the seam as you are ripping everything out because these seams are still on a bias edges. With AcuQuilt, if you line everything up, the only bias edge is your seam, which anytime that you're doing a half square triangle, you still need to be careful of bias edges on your seam. Let's see. Charlotte says she cut all the pieces for Storm at Sea and Exploding Heart with her AcuQuilt. I told you the Exploding Heart is probably a really great one for an AcuQuilt just because it's so many pieces. Um, Stephanie says if you purchase from AcuQuilt directly, they have payment plan option because they realize it's a lot of money upfront too. That is interesting to know because, one day I'm sure I'm going to have finger mobility issues trying to cut, so maybe I'll have to work towards an AcuQuilt. I need my sewing studio first. So we'll see what happens. Nikki B says hi from Missouri. Could be Missouri, depending on where in that state she is. Uh, she just got, or she just, I'm assuming, ordered an AcuQuilt yesterday and looking forward to receiving the shipment. That was a lot of translation. Now I understand what Stephen keeps saying. Um, Mary says that AcuQuilt she's heard has pretty good sales as well. And Heidi's brain is cheap. I agree. My brain is very cheap. Charlotte says her next AcuQuilt cutting project is Remixed Geese by Robert Kaufman. there's something like 200 flying geese. So, since we're talking about flying geese, Triangulations has what they call tamed geese. It is a another piece of paper, and you can do it so that they are individual flying geese that you are cutting out, or you can print out pages that are a line of geese. So if you're doing a flying geese border, and that you can do your flying geese using Triangulations with their tamed geese. And they have, like I said, they have strips of them. So from the top of the page to the bottom of the page is just goose after goose after goose after goose, depending on, again, the size of, the size of the flying geese that you're working with. Haven't used that yet because I haven't done really a flying geese border. But every time that somebody talks about flying geese, I'm like, that is a really good option. I know Fat Quarter Shop has done their flying geese paper, and like I said, Triangulations, I can do flying geese with them as well. So I figure if I've got, you know, every size half square triangle possible up to whatever fits on a piece of paper, and then pretty much any size flying geese possible that fits on a piece of paper with those, it's definitely worth it. They also give a couple patterns in there, but I haven't done the patterns yet. Good morning, Teresa Louise. How are you today? Let me see if I can get another triangle worked on, because it doesn't take long to sew them. And as we see, I don't have to be perfect with my cutting sizes, because as long as it's bigger than what I'm sewing, then it trims down fine. And on this one, I see that I have my selvage over here, so I just want to make sure that I am well within. I mean, I've got plenty of room from the selvage, but because I had extra room over here, I just wanted to make sure that I was well within my selvage dimensions. Nikki B is not awake yet. Her brain is frozen. She lives in Missouri, near Jefferson City. I my dad's side of the family is from somewhere near there. I remember when I think it was between 7th and 8th grade, they had a family reunion out there. So basically, me, my sister, and dad went out. And I remember us going like out to the Ozarks, and I remember cousins are saying that they needed to go take a trip to Jeff City. So I'm going to make the assumption that meant Jefferson City, because I don't know if there's any other place that begins with Jeff. So that was that was my first knowledgeable experience with Missouri. Um, when Dad passed away, we drove out there, and I remember sister in the passenger seat, I'm in the driver's seat, and I was able to let go of the steering wheel for several minutes because the road was that straight and the alignment on my truck was that good. Teresa Louise says it is minus 20, and very thankful the power is on and nice and warm in the house. I would be thankful too. If the temperature gets to be a minus, I, one, don't function, and two, turn up the heat. My body temperature that I prefer inside usually goes with what's going on outside. If it is warm outside, I want the inside to be nice and cool. If it's outside, I want the inside to be nice and cool. If it is super freezing outside, I want to be inside to be super warm. So basically, most of the time, I keep my thermostat. Well, summer I try to keep it around 68 to 70, depending on how much I'll let my electric bill go up and whether or not my air conditioner is busted. But then in the wintertime, like right now, my thermostat's set to 64 and I'm comfortable. It's like I said, it was 30 degrees this morning, and I was nice and happy with it being 64 in the house. But the moment that it gets to be really cold, or even the really wet days, or really cold and wet, then I'm like, okay, I want a little bit more temperature in the house. So again, that took almost no time to sew, and then all I have to do is trim them up, and I've got my half square triangles. They're talking about dies. Good morning, Judy Hebert. Or Hebert. There's no R there at the beginning, so maybe it is Hebert. Um, Exploding Hearts is on Mary's bucket list. 68 in the house is warm. Yes. I try not to let the wintertime get above 68. I think there was one time last year when it was in the single digits here, Fahrenheit. Riley wanted to go out for walks, and I can't deny her. Neighbors were like, "You're crazy being out here walking this time of day in this temperature." And I was like, "She needs a walk. I'm obliging." But when I would come into the house, I think I had my house set to closer to 70. Just because it was too darn cold. Maybe I will do one more before I decide to pop off of here, just so that we can see what I'm doing again. Fabrics are right sides together. Trusty glue dots. And you really can't see it, but where I am glue dotting is I'm glue dotting across this cut line, and I'm glue dotting here in this area and here in this area. So I'm avoiding anywhere where I would do a stitch. And again, that's just because I don't know what the glue dots does to the needle. Don't want to really figure that out. So I'm doing 3 sets of glue dots. And then I will place it onto my slightly oversized pieces of fabric and then stitch on the dotted lines. Mary is asking, what breed of puppy dog? Riley is a bully mix. We initially thought she might have been like a pit lab mix, but I got the Embark DNA test done, and it's basically bully, 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 bully. 4 different bully, pit bull, those themes of breeds, and then she's got border collie in her, and then the remainder 25% is super mutt. So lots of puppies, lots of energy that she has, and all of that explains the energy. We have found possible second and third cousins using that website. One of them looks very much like her, um, and whatever the DNA percent shared is. And that other dog was also rescued in Georgia, so it's a very good possibility that that puppy is like her cousin. But that puppy is in Virginia, so the chances of us meeting up for a play date is next to none. Plus, Riley, she only does great for play dates at daycare. Oh, Mary's dogs, or Mary says her dogs won't be walked until spring. Oh, no, that was one of the agreements that I made with myself when I said that I wanted to get another dog was when the puppy wanted to go for a walk, I had to go for a walk. So, needless to say, I've been on now 3 years of walks. The only time that I do not go on a walk is when she's at daycare or when I have to board her because I am going away for a couple days, which means she's at daycare. When I had surgery on my foot 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, she spent a week at training camp. I call it that. She went to, um, it was basically training to help her calm down a little bit. Uh, it helped some, it didn't help in others. She's still a sweetheart. But that was only for, was it 1 week or 2 weeks that I sent her? But when I got her back, I was still in the boot. So she wanted walks, so I had to walk her around the block. And that's really what cemented the whole idea that she gets to go around the block whenever she wants. It's a 10-minute walk to go from the house around the couple turns to get us here. So I don't mind it. And she does mind it when it rains. But I said, you have to go for your walk. Need you to go potty, whether it's raining or not. Judy has 3 rescues herself, 2 labs and a husky. My sister did the DNA test on her new rescue, and it's basically a husky and hound mix, if I'm remembering correctly. So I'm waiting for when her dog starts to sing. Teresa Louise says her dogs want to go out on a walk, but won't be doing it. Hubby can have that job. They have 5+ acres to run around, so I don't understand why they need her to go. Even with my backyard, where Riley can go, if the neighbors would let their dog play again, she'd have her to play with. And by play, they just run up and down the fence, chasing each other. But her dog had to have surgery on both back legs for whatever reason. Something helicopter parents, I'm calling it. But I still wouldn't let Riley out unsupervised because we have bunnies in the backyard every now and then. I don't want her to catch one. We have squirrels and chipmunks in the backyard. I don't want her to catch one. The neighbor's dog has caught a couple chipmunks and disturbed my neighbor because, catching chipmunks is a hunting activity. Plus, we have coyotes in the neighborhood, and I don't want Riley to be out and maybe a coyote hop up in the backyard. I've had deer in my backyard. Don't know how the deer got there because it's a fenced-in backyard. But because of all of the wildlife that's in this suburban area, I do not want her to end up seeing something. I've even had possums in the backyard or walking the front yard. So, yeah, I don't want her to catch anything. I don't want her to get bit by anything by trying to catch it. So there's all of that I'm just like, let's just keep that down to a minimum. Sarah read that as 2 labs and a hubby. That's kind of amusing. So I am going to start wrapping it up because it's been just over an hour and I have talked a lot. I've had fun sewing, but at least, if I'm not sitting here chit-chatting, I can tend to sew a little bit faster. Yeah, Denise, deer do jump pretty high fences. When I saw the deer in the backyard, I went to open up a gate and I realized I should not be going that gate because that's right by where the deer is and it could charge me, and he's got horns, antlers. So I didn't want to risk that. And when I went to the other side to open up that gate to give him a path out that was far enough away, he saw me and then he ran to the back area and then bounded the fences. So that was a lot of surprise to me because I didn't know they can bound fences like that. So I hope everybody's enjoyed this. Again, if you want to try Triangulations, there is a link in the video below in the description to a sample page that is out there. You can print it on any printer paper, and because it's a sample page, you don't even have to worry about your printer settings because whatever the triangles come out as or what the triangles come out as, and you can just put them together in whatever shape you want. Any links that I have in there, they're not affiliate links, so I get nothing if you choose to purchase. You're just supporting the company who actually puts out this piece of software. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. Make sure you check out all of the YouTubers that are streaming this weekend. Mom and Pop Quilt Shop should be streaming in about 45 minutes. They do a wonderful stream every Saturday. Stephanie of Quilting with Stephanie Stitches, she's going to be live at 5. I believe she has Shannon of Slay Arts on today, and they're working on some legit kit stuff. So that's going to be fun. I'm going to have them on while I'm working on Triangulations this evening. Tomorrow morning at 11... no, that's not happening tomorrow. Tomorrow, Stephanie and Shannon have a virtual retreat, which I will be at. I don't know if there's any spaces left in the retreat. If Stephanie wants, she can paste the link in there because she is a moderator. But they are doing a retreat tomorrow. There is a pattern that Shannon has written. It's her first pattern, so I'm excited for this. And then Stephanie has a pattern that she's doing in the afternoon. So it's basically 2 patterns for one. You get all the instructions and everything for it. So I am excited to attend that. Tomorrow evening, maybe, or it's going to be like later because like I said, I'm going to be at the retreat. My weekly vlog is going to be up with all the shenanigans that happened this week. Spoiler alert, Riley was good this week at daycare. So we will have that. And then there's going to be tons and tons of lives throughout the week from a whole bunch of content creators. I hope you catch all of them. So it's going to be just exciting. Monday's a holiday here for a lot of us in the US, so maybe there'll be some pop-up lives on Monday that are unexpected. I'm hoping, especially for the people who will be at the retreat Saturday, maybe they'll be able to do a surprise Monday live or something. So I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. And yeah, just check everybody else. Bye.